The beauty of Antarctica is often seen as the bottom of the world, but it's really the center of the world. It's one continent surrounded by an ocean that is connecting all the other oceans together. So it's quite a special place. It's very calm.
Through uncharted waters, in autumn, Australia's icebreaker headed out on its maiden marine science voyage to the Denman Glacier in East Antarctica. The 60 scientists on board are looking into why that glacier is melting so fast.
Oh, look at that.
If it were to disappear completely, it could increase global sea levels by 1.5 metres.
The reason why that glacier is interesting is because of sea level rise, but that also has an impact on ecosystems around it, on how much carbon dioxide might be taken up in the future. So we wanted to understand what was driving that change that is ongoing in the glacier.
Those scientists are now back on land, processing and analysing what they found.
This one's so squishy.
But as the Antarctic region is rapidly warming, Antarctic research is in decline.
A lot of nations are sort of going backwards just at a time when we really need to advance our understanding of Antarctica.
A study published through the University of the Arctic found that globally, the number of Antarctic and Southern Ocean publications peaked in 2021, then fell every year to 2024. The study also showed the US is no longer the leader in published papers, instead overtaken by China in 2022.
The United States have been the clear leader for decades in Antarctica, but that's declined in the last decade by about 20%, at least in terms of measured outputs. Then there's a dramatic change from China with a tripling of their outputs.
Despite some territorial claims, no one owns Antarctica. Here, science is currency.
So everyone is in Antarctica for science, but everyone, I think, is also there for geopolitical reasons.
12 nations with Antarctic interests, including Australia, agreed to preserve the area for peaceful research. Frozen wastes where 1959 brought a thaw in the Cold War.
Antarctica has been governed by a treaty of nations for more than 60 years. It designates the continent for peaceful and scientific purposes. Military activity and mining are strictly prohibited.
The US, under the Eisenhower administration, was actually the country that really drove the formation of the Antarctic Treaty in 1959.
Today, 58 countries are party to the Antarctic Treaty system that governs the area. Only 29, including Australia, can make binding decisions.
Science is one means of showing influence in the region. When the Antarctic Treaty meetings occur, it's also the countries that do the most science and have the strongest Antarctic logistics that tend to have more weight in those meetings. They tend to be the countries that set the agenda and which other countries pay attention to because they're considered to be the big players in Antarctic science and Antarctic logistics.
With the US pulling back on science, it'll have long-term implications for US leadership and influence when it comes to governance on the continent.
Evan Bloom had a long career working on Antarctic issues, including as the head of Antarctic diplomacy at the US Department of State.
Things seem to be changing under the Trump administration. So the US Antarctic Program is run by the National Science Foundation, and the National Science Foundation budget is supposed to be reduced by upwards of 50%. And there have been announcements about the reduction in logistics support, including non-lease in the future of the last remaining U.S. research icebreaker that is currently deployed in the Southern Ocean.
I guess the risk for Australia is that other countries will step up and try and fill that void that's been created by the Americans pulling back. And the most obvious countries that might do that are countries like China and perhaps even Russia.
While the treaty system governing Antarctica has traditionally worked well, decisions need to be made by consensus. And recently, Russia and China have been accused of undermining krill fishing restrictions and stopping the establishment of new marine parks.
Russia and China might have different reasons for blocking consensus at Antarctic Treaty System meetings, but there is certainly a pattern there over the last 5 or 10 years which is of some concern.
Both China and Russia are expanding their presence and investment in Antarctica. Some experts have raised concerns that scientific equipment installed in Antarctica, including infrared telescopes and ground station receivers, could be used for both scientific and military or surveillance purposes.
These are things that need to be watched. At the same time, China, like Russia, are conducting legitimate science in Antarctica, and they have a right to conduct that science. But it's also necessary when it comes to strategic rivals to keep an eye on what's going on.
For Australia and other countries that collaborate closely with the US in Antarctica, there are fears about the flow-on impacts of less science from the former powerhouse.
The scale of what the US has contributed over the last decades is so significant that as it pulls back, it's kind of a problem for everybody.
Antarctica does seem like a long way away from us, but it actually serves what we call an ecosystem service. It really regulates our climate, it regulates our weather, and so it's really key to understand what happens in Antarctica if we want to be able to understand what happens in Australia.